This interview is brought to you by Burn It Up Coaching and the 21-Day Challenge. And if you are an entrepreneur or a high achiever and you're committed to getting to your next level, you want to dive into your purpose, you want to get unstuck, you really want to tap into your greatness, then the 21-Day Challenge is the perfect fit for you. What you'll do in the first day or two, you'll get clear on the purpose of your life, the statement of purpose, the vision, the mission, the strategy, of the objectives, what you're here for, and you'll learn how to break that down into bite-sized steps. What are your 3-year, 1 year, 6 month, 3 month, one month, and 1 week goals, so that you have a clear plan of action to attack and succeed with your 21-day goal. So what you'll do is you'll have daily check-ins, daily progress reports, a VIP premium experience with me, like making sure that you're accountable, holding your feet to the fire, weekly deep dive calls, uncovering the limiting beliefs and the self-sabotaging patterns that are keeping you stuck or stopped so that you can achieve your 21-day challenge goal, and also dialing in your habits, in your routines, your morning and your nighttime rituals to prepare and really give yourself the biggest shot, the biggest chance, the biggest success of that success, the biggest rate of success. So that's the 21-day challenge. And if you are ready to ignite, definitely send me a message, chris@beyourgps.com. And if you're ready to really step into the relationship of your dreams, the life of your dreams, the wealth, the success, the prosperity, the health, whatever that is for you, I'm happy here to hold you accountable, give you clarity on that dream and vision, and give you the ignition to go and get it. So send me a message and connect with me. Looking forward to talking to you about your 21-day challenge goal. Next is going to be the iTunes review of the week. And guess who the iTunes review of the week is this week? It's inspired by Obsidian. That's Obsidian. Obsidian says, Soul Fire. Whenever I have the opportunity to connect with Chris, he leaves me feeling inspired, refreshed, and determined. People like Chris are examples of what becoming your greatest possible self looks like. A gift to this world, a walking, talking, and thriving legacy. Thank you, Chris. Thanks so much, Obsidian. And if you're out there listening, definitely give us a review. Go to beyourgps.com/iTunes. or search Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self in the iTunes or podcast store. Really appreciate that in advance. Thanks so much for letting us know what's working, what's empowering for you, how you're growing, how you are appreciating the show, or what we could do differently to improve it in the future. Thank you so much in advance for doing that. Now, this next man is an incredible, inspirational, powerful, courageous human being, and you definitely want to stay through all the way to the end, because these conversations that I've had with him are so real, so powerful, so grounded, so just moving, and it's just awesome. Jay Rothman is an incredible human being, and you definitely want to stick around throughout this entire interview, because I swear, from 1 minute to the next, you never know what you're going to get in a good way, and we're going to get all kinds of gifts, surprises, and golden nuggets from this, so definitely stick around to the end, and you will absolutely be so grateful you did. Now, this man, Jay Rothman, having hit his rock bottom 3 years ago, Jay had to be willing to rebirth and unlearn everything in his life. If he wanted to live, Jay had to have the courage to change. Through the process of learning how to self-care and self-love, Jay was able to heal his mind, body, and soul. Today he publishes weekly blogs. He has 2 live shows on social media weekly, and he's about to launch a non-profit to provide resources, education, and healing opportunities for those that have been impacted by many of life's challenges. Recently, Jay launched Choose Apparel, where you can order positive affirmation apparel to remind yourself how to make a positive impact on your own life as well as others that you meet in the moment. And we are absolutely blessed to have him here with us today. Jay, are you ready to rock the house, brother?
I am here. I am present.
That's right. Presence is the name of the game. Welcome to the show, Jay. Thank you so much for being here and sharing with our audience how we can become our greatest possible self in the areas of mind and body and soul, which you've been really taking on and developing this mastery and learning and experience in to share and empower those around you. So thanks so much for being here, brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me. I kind of feel like, listening to my bio and introduction, I feel like we covered it all. What more needs to be said?
Just go home. We're done. Wrap it up, people.
I think we're good. It's,
I know.
When we speak the truth, we don't really have to go too far. We hear what we hear when we're ready to receive it too.
Wow.
So. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely, man. It was such an honor, connecting with you. I think it was like a month or two back, and you really got to know each other. And then I came on the show, and you interviewed me. It was a blast, and you really brought the best out of me. I know my parents said that was like one of the most powerful ways that they could learn about me and understand me. My mom gave me that feedback especially, and she's like, "That was an amazing interview that you did," and I didn't know like all those things about you. So thank you for drawing that out of me, Jay. I really appreciate you, man.
Wow, I received that in such a beautiful way. I hadn't heard that from you, so we'll take what we can get because I'm new at this. This whole thing about doing social media and showing up for not only myself but for others and paying it forward. It's a new game. It's not something I ever dreamed that would happen in my lifetime. But then again, I never dreamed that I hit a rock bottom twice in my life. The first time I hit it, I thought I was done, but I guess I had to get sicker. I wasn't sick enough, and I had to hit a lower bottom the second time around to have my awakening.
Yeah.
And through that, as I've gone through the healing process of, as you refer to, mind, body, and soul, it allowed me to really wake up and understand that there is such a need for people to have resources and places to go to get educated, and through real people, because at least in the American society, most people think there's only one way to go, and that's through the traditional means of, from a mental health standpoint, as soon as we get into trouble with relationships with others and with ourselves, we think we're going to get all our answers if we go see a therapist. And it just didn't quite work out that way for me.
So before we dive in too much, you're already giving us some gold, some good open loops, telling us some foreshadowing, so to speak. Before we go into that, I do want to dive into the theme of the day, which is presence, and that's something that you are so profound at. And whether you think yourself that or see yourself as that or whatever it might be, I know you are that. And I really experienced that with you, is your level of presence, your level of care, your level of, when you're in a conversation, it's the only thing that matters to you. And I think that that's something that I embody. And so for me, I see that in other people well, because I know I have that gift as well. So Jay, how has presence impacted you in your life, in your journey, in your career, in your health, in your spirituality, whatever way you want to take it in direction? How has it impacted you, man?
It's such a great question, because there's the before and there's the after. So we'll go pre-2015, fourth quarter of 15. My presence was very limited because I was in such deep thought all the time, always trying to figure out how to solve life's challenges, how to solve other people's issues, and I was so enmeshed in my own thoughts and obsessive thinking, how to solve problems that really were not my problems to solve, that it really took me out of being present in the moment most of the time. And so that's how it was. And through the process of working on myself and doing the work that I had to do in order to make the conscious decision that I wanted to live. And when I say live, because you see, before October, I was living to die. And today I'm dying to live. And there's a big difference between the two. Yeah. One is like you're kind of in this hole, the rabbit hole, as my spiritual mentor refers to it as. And you're just getting by. You're just surviving in all aspects of your life, whether it be at home, whether it be with your relationships at home, relationships in employment, relationships with friends, extended family. You're just surviving. You're just trying to figure out how to get through one more day, because you're in that hamster wheel, as we all know. Yeah. And we're chasing the dream. And what I didn't understand was that I was chasing the wrong dream all of my life. And it wasn't until I was willing to understand and accept that I had hit rock bottom, which meant that I was bankrupt emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. I was out of answers. Almost every relationship in my life had been damaged. primarily by my own behavior, my own thinking, and I understood when I got released from Cedars-Sinai Hospital, because my rock bottom was my physical health had become so catastrophic that I was near death and had no idea how sick I had become. And what happened was that when I got released from the hospital and I made that decision that I had to be willing to change every aspect of my life, as you refer to as, rebirthing and unlearning every aspect. It was through that process that I started to understand that, see, I could live in one of three places. I live in the past. When I live in the past, for me, a lot of it, I would go to anger, resentment, guilt, shame, and blame.
Yep.
Those 5 strong emotions that had impacted my life from the time I was a very young child. And or if I leap forward into the future, which is another place in space that we as human beings tend to go, and that's called the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. So when we're in the future, I refer to it as future tripping. And when we go to that trip, for me, it used to mean a lot of fear. And what was behind the fear was I had a fear of how things may turn out, whether it be financially, whether it be physically, emotionally, relationship-wise, career-wise. But typically, when I go to the future, it took me out of the present. And so in the past, it was anger, resentment, guilt, shame, and blame. The future trip was fear of the unknown. And the 2 acronyms that I love for fear is, one is false evidence appearing real. And the other one, of course, is forgetting everything's all right. And so what I've learned is that when I move forward out, or if I go backwards, both of those are taking me out of the present. And neither one of those serve me well anymore. One causes me anxiety, which would be the future. And one causes potentially a lot of regret, shame, and all those negative emotions. And so, for me today, the healthiest place that I could be is right here, right now, in this moment, present, just to be. And by showing up in the present for myself, I'm able to be much more present when I'm engaged in relationships with other people. And if I am aware, and that's the big key, is the awareness of, if I start to see I'm slipping because I'm being distracted by one of my 60,000 thoughts that may be racing through my head, because that's about how many thoughts as a human being we all encounter in a 24-hour period. Wow. That's a lot of thoughts to process. But when I'm going one place or the other and it takes me out of the moment, I've lost myself, and I've lost that moment, that gift to really have that intimate transaction, relational transaction with Chris Burns. And I remember the first time that you and I connected. I believe I had reached out to you, and we were introduced by Debbie G from Spirituality Gone Wild, and we finally had that moment where we had this type of intimate conversation that we're doing live, except we were not live, but we were live together. And within less than an hour, I had gotten emotional. I was brought to tears, and I just shared a lot of what had transpired in my life, and we connected. We connected on that emotional level, just 2 men doing something that a lot of men have either never experienced, don't know how to experience, and may never experience, because it takes courage. It takes courage to tear down those belief systems that we have of how we're supposed to behave as men, as a testosterone induced male ego, and just feel safe enough to allow both the feminine and the masculine, because we have both, to come out and be present and just don't get along. And we learn how to get along with ourselves and be present for ourselves, and we can be present in relationships. So there's the long answer.
I love it. I love it. And one thing you said to me, and this goes back into your journey, which will really take us where we want to go in the next kind of phase of this conversation. You have so much wisdom. You're like so wise, and you may think that you do or may think that you don't. Either way, doesn't matter. From my perspective, you do, and you're very wise, and you're very profound, and present and mindful and full of life in a good way. And so I'm curious, like, did you always see yourself as smart and brilliant or wise, or you had great answers and you could listen effectively? Or was there that moment you said, 3 years ago when you were bankrupt that really turned everything around? And if not, like, what was it like before you lived, 3 years ago?
Well, you see, I thought I had a lot of answers.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of solutions. But part of that was it was just a belief system. It's what I was taught. I never saw myself as a very smart or intelligent human being. I saw myself as a survivor that knew how to get by. And part of that was I had one of my addictions, as I refer to it, was codependency.
Mm-hmm.
I had very, very unhealthy codependent behaviors and thought processes, and that was something that I learned very early on in my childhood in my home, because I thought that I was smarter than a family member, and I thought that I had the ability to help a parent and help navigate them through their challenges. And boy, that was just such a false sense of power, such a false sense of ego at a young age. And the more I was complimented for my ability to be such a great listener and to be able to be empathetic and to be present for an adult when I was just a kid, kind of gave me this false sense of who I really was. And the reality was I was just a kid that just maybe I just had some natural insight on people and sociology of the mind and all. And psychology. But, at the end of the day, I really didn't have a whole lot to offer to too many people. But what I did have was this false sense of understanding and this false sense of how I could help people out. And the challenge with that was that it compromised my own well-being. I got so lost in my own addictive behaviors of codependency in my own personal life that by the time I figured out what was going on, I had basically lost myself, as what happens to people that behave in codependent relationships. And so I never saw myself as really intelligent. But what I did do really well was I was always thinking ahead, meaning if I was in a conversation with you right now, Chris, I was listening with a half an ear because I was already coming up with my next question or my next answer for you, and trying to lead the conversation or lead you down a path where I was going to control you and control the outcome. I don't know if any of this sounds familiar to you or any of your listeners in your community, but my God, I've met a lot of people over the last 3 years who said, oh my, yeah, it's kind of describing how I used to behave, how I still behave, and I don't want to behave this way anymore. And what do I got to do to change me? And so, when we talk about unbirthing or rebirthing and unlearning, I had to be willing to accept that everything that I thought was the truth about myself and about people and about what I thought was important in my life, I had it all wrong. I had every aspect of my life wrong. And how I know that was to be the truth was every one of my relationships 3 years ago was pretty much destroyed. Every relationship was fractured and either this detachment or toxic, combination of all of the above. And so, again, I believe I answered your question in kind of weaving and flowing and from here to there and back. So here I am today. And, it's interesting to hear you say those words that I have wisdom. It's a place where I want to be able to receive it in a healthy way, in a way where I'm able to receive it in a space of humility and not coming from that space of ego and pride, because you see, that's when I lived in the matrix. The matrix is what I refer to as, the belief system, at least in the United States. I'm not going to generalize and say we're all in the matrix, but I lived in that matrix. I lived in a false sense of belief system, a false sense of what was important in my life. And I was chasing happiness and fulfillment in all the wrong places.
Hmm.
And what I learned when I nearly died the second time was that I did a lot of things to try to find happiness and try to be comfortable with who I was. And I was looking everywhere in the external. And I had lived in 8 states up until 3 years ago.
Wow.
And none of those moves were for the healthy reasons. They were all geographical moves because I was basically thinking if I moved, maybe my life would get better. And all that I did was I kept bringing more luggage with me and kept kind of dragging all those challenges and problems with me. Mm-hmm. And it never really did get better. We had those moments where, I mean, in between, life was good, but there were moments where life was good, and there were a lot of good things that did take place. But when we look at the big picture, there was a lot that was not right. There was a lot of unhealthy behavior, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, a lot of toxicity that was within myself that just oozed out on the people that I cared the most about in my life, which was my wife at the time of 28 years and my 3 sons who are now in their 20s. And so there was a lot of damage that was caused by my old ways. So I thank you for that. And I think you asked, how did I get here? Was I always that way? The answer is no, I was not that way at all. And it's taken a lot of work. It's taken tremendous work for me to unlearn and rebirth myself and change my behaviors and change the person that I was. Because when I woke up, one of the days at Cedars-Sinai, the last time I was an inpatient there, I realized that if that was the last day of my life, I was embarrassed by the legacy that I would leave to my family members, to my children, at the time my wife, at the time my extended family, my mom and my dad and my sister and anyone else, my friends, employees, employers that knew me. I realized that I was embarrassed by the man I had become and the man that I was because
what would the legacy have been if you would have died?
Well, if I wrote the legacy, if I wrote my own eulogy,
no,
it would probably be very different because you see, because I knew the truth. You see, I did a really good job of hiding what I would refer to as the truth as to who I was until my life started to unravel, and the people closest to me started to learn about my truths. And so, if I was to have written my own eulogy around the 10th or 12th of October of 2015, it would have been something like this. He was a good guy who was a hell of a dad. He did the best that he could, but he was a liar, he was a cheater, and he stole. And he hurt a lot of people. He had no empathy and compassion for others. He had narcissistic tendencies, and he tried hard, but he wasn't good enough. And that was the truth. That was your legacy that you would write from your perspective. Would there be any difference from if other people were writing it? Like, would it be 10 times worse? Would it be 10 times more nasty? Like, what would the difference be if it wasn't you writing it and it was your loved ones? It just depends on who you'd ask. If you were to ask my ex-wife, her answer would be very different than some other people in my world. And that's not for me to answer, but what was for me to answer was, if that was the last day of my life, was I done? Or did I have to get busy? Did I have enough time to change the trajectory of my life and to change who I was and really, really change my skin so that I could spend the rest of my life making living amends the best way I could figure out how, because I had no idea what that was going to even look like.
Well, I think that it's powerful to understand how people saw you, because like you know how you see yourself, and to check in with the reality of other people really gives us a sense of how are we showing up in the world. And the man who you are today, I'm 100% sure, is a function of how you thought other people saw you back then, which you at some point got disgusted with, and then you truly looked in within yourself, and then you really felt disgusted with yourself, and you're like, I don't want to die like this, and then you changed your direction. I think it takes getting the reflection of reality back to us from people, circumstances, whatever it might be, for us to finally check in and look in within ourself and our soul and ask, wait, am I on track with myself and my purpose and my highest self? And then that's when we're like, oh my gosh, no, it's totally incongruent, totally not my greatest possible self. Let's shift, because I'm not good with dying like this as who I am. I'm committed to taking different actions. I'm committed to loving myself and showing up as the character of who I know I'm capable of being in the world, and making that contribution ultimately to the people around me. What are your thoughts about that?
I have a different perspective.
Okay.
There are parts of what you just said that I concur with, but there's a big part that I see a little differently. And here's my truth today.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said this before in some of my live blogs, some of my live Facebook feeds, I should say, and some of my written blogs, is that there's a saying that I learned as I went through a 12-step recovery program for myself. And no, it wasn't for alcohol and drugs. For me, it was for codependency primarily. Mm-hmm. And that's that. It's none of my business what you think of me. And so what I mean by that is, over the last 3 years, I have made a lot of decisions for myself that I believe have been in the best interest of myself, that have gone against what I'll call the traditional thought process and belief systems that the majority of people in my circle of life have had and continue to have. And I made some very, 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 very profound, difficult, impactful choices for myself that I didn't per se necessarily ask input from others, because I didn't need to. Because what I've learned in my healing process is that there's only two places that I need to go to really truly get my answers. One is by going deep within myself through prayer and meditation. And the other one is listening for the answers from that some people refer to as a higher power. I'll refer to as my divine or God. Mm-hmm. Those are the only two places I need to go for answers today, because that's where the truth lies. That's where my truth lies, because there's nobody that knows me like me. There's nobody that knows all of my secrets, all of my thoughts, all of my wishes, all of my character defects and flaws like I do. Because anything outside of me is just the self-image that, when we talk about how other people perceive us, right? That's all that it is. It's just a perception. And it's not always the truth, because look, I got through 54 years of my life with a lot of people's perception of me. And some people were probably had a pretty good idea, but most didn't. Mm-hmm. And that's because I mastered the skill set of deception. I was really good at it. I learned how to do it at a young age. It was part of my survival techniques. It's not something that I'm proud of today, but it's part of my story. Right. And what I do know today is that I choose today to no longer live in perceptions, but I choose to live in my reality. Even when my reality is going to cause people that care and love for me some concern, like questioning, am I doing the right thing? I don't agree with you. But what's happened over the last couple of years is that most of those people that truly authentically have a vested interest in my well-being, they have come to learn to respect my decisions, even when they don't agree with them, because where they're coming from, and what I understand today, is they're coming from a space of just fear, because they're afraid that something's going to happen. Yet, from my perspective, I have that awareness, and all of that means is, instead of me going to anger or resentment towards them, or feeling like they're judging me, I'm able to just accept that in this moment that they're right where they're at. They don't understand me, and that's okay. I don't need to even explain myself to anyone else. I just need to feel comfortable with whatever that decision is that I feel is in my best interest. And you know what's the worst thing that happens is that if it doesn't work out and it's a mistake, I get to learn a lesson. Mm-hmm. And it's through each lesson, it's through each mistake is where the growth comes. It's through each moment of discomfort, each moment of pain, each moment of despair, each moment of grief, each moment of emotions that may bring me to tears. That is when I get to grow. And through that growth, I become the best version of myself. I become the best possible self that I'm capable of being. And that's what attracted me to you, Chris, because greatest possible self, that's what I've been focused on, and so I applaud the work that you do. I applaud how you show up for yourself and you show up for others by paying it forward and providing a marathon show every Wednesday. I just don't know how you do it. I know how you do it. You're a whole lot younger than I am, at least chronologically. I don't know the rest, but so.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your perspective, and I appreciate that. And I think there's so much truth in that, in going within, like the answers are always within, and like the higher power, getting connected to that aspect. And I think one thing as a coach that I focus on that I learned in my journey is I have blind spots. I have areas and aspects of my life that I see, and there's areas and aspects that I don't see. And so I've found that by checking in with other people, I've gotten access to that a lot faster to grow and become my greatest possible self. So I think it's just like, what is our primary mode? Definitely, I would say go within. Go within to find the answers. That's the best place first. And then if, for me, I've struggled with certain challenges, well, then I'm like, okay, I need some freaking help. Send me some help.
And I love that, because we do need to know when it's time to ask for help.
Yeah.
By no means am I suggesting that we live in a space of isolation,
Right.
because isolation is the worst place we could be.
Oh, man.
I'm not, by no means am I inferring that I isolate. I am very present for myself. I'm very much out there. What I do today is, how I'm present is I share my journey in a very, very, very public way today. And I made that conscious decision. It was about a year ago, July, when I started, one day I had never written before, and I was inspired to pull over to the side of the bike path along the shoreline in Huntington Beach, where I'd spent at that point 2 years riding my bike every single day, 7 days a week, to work on healing my mind, body, and soul. And I started to write one day, and whatever came to me in that moment, and it was unusual. I'd never done it before. And about 2 days later, the same experience happened. And it was after that second time that I did that I had this moment of clarity, this awareness that I need to start sharing this writing. And that became the foundation for my blogs. And what that did was, it allowed me to no longer live in secrecy. It allowed me to no longer live in what I refer to as non-disclosure. I decided that I was going to be very, very transparent in my healing process, and felt that the progress that I had made was so profound that if I could share my healing process and my nuggets, as you refer to them, I refer to them today as liquid gold, because through sharing my liquid gold, if I could touch one person's life and give them the courage or the inspiration or both to shift some perspective in their life, some behavior in their life that improves their life, that gives them the inner peace, the inner joy, the comfort, the ease, the serenity, the gratitude, the humility, to have those experiences like I have come to experience on most days of my life, then I've given it away. I've given it back. I've made my living amends. And so, it's a beautiful way to live today. The smile that you see on my face, I don't think I had a smile on my face most of my life. I was a very deep thinker. Always had been, because I had a lot to think about. I had a lot going on. But today it's just so different. And it's a life that I never ever dreamed I'd have or experience in this lifetime. I had pretty much written off this life. I really thought that the cards that I was dealt were the cards that I was dealt, and I didn't see a way out. I didn't see a way out of unhealthy relationships that I was in. I didn't see a way out of my addictions. I talk about my addictions today, and I'm going to put them out there right here, because I've done this before, and I have no secrets today. So these are 5 addictions that I lived with for all of my life. I was a codependent, so that was one. I was a workaholic. I worked on average 10 to 12-hour days on a bad day, and on a good day, I put in 15 hours. That was a good day for me. And if I was having a fabulous day, I'd push to 18 hours. And there were days where I did 18 hours in a day if I was traveling on the road, for sure, in my business at the time, 34 years. So I was a workaholic. I was a codependent. I had a food addiction. You can't see it here right now, but I use food for comfort. I grew up in New York, and I loved a lot of food that was just not good for me. And I was in the business of restaurant business. So I did restaurant design my whole career. And so the restaurants I was in, they were not gluten-free, vegetarian, vegan restaurants. They were the quick serve market. So my business primarily was Burger King, McDonald's, Taco Bell, KFC. I could go on. There's more behind those, but I was an addict. I was addicted to that food. Totally. I ate that food twice a day, most days, 5 days a week. And if I was feeling irritable, if I was feeling like I needed a pick-me-up, if I got a phone call that I didn't like, if I got a phone call that I did like an alcoholic who has a good reason to reach for that drink no matter what, I reached for that food, and I was addicted to it, and it really impacted my health. Yeah. But so there was that food addiction. So I've lost now like 70 pounds.
That's crazy.
Over the last 3 years. And then, of course,
do you have any pictures of you before you lost this weight? I want to see a picture of you, Jay. Send it to me after this.
I will. And then, of course, I picked up smoking when I was 35 because, the food wasn't enough and I need something else. And then, of course, the addiction that was the most painful one, that was the covert one, was I had a sex addiction. I was a sex addict for most of my life from the time I was a young teenager. And the only reason I believe I didn't pick up alcohol and drugs is because I found sex first. And so, unfortunately, there was a lot of pain for myself, and there was a lot of pain in my marriage that towards the end when everything really came out. And it was a very, very painful time for all of my family members, not just my wife and I, but unfortunately, my children learned of my behaviors as a sex addict. And so I had to be willing to look at all of my addictions and also deal with my physical decline in my health that had taken place. And I had to either accept that I was going to just do nothing and die, or I had to be willing to have the courage to change. And so here I am today. Today I have a beautiful life.
Yes, I love it. So moving forward, progressing into, you do some really inspirational, courageous, powerful things. Like one of the things you did recently was a water fast, right? For what did you go for? 14, 15 days?
No, you're selling me short. Each day was just, talk about being present.
Yeah.
When I went into it, my intention was to do 30 days.
Uh-huh.
And I made it to 18.2 days.
Dang.
So 18.2. And the only reason I made the conscious decision to abort my fast at 18.2 was when I started the fast, I was down at 142, which was, last time I was 142, I was a freshman in college. And I was losing, which is pretty typical average, you lose a pound a day.
Wow.
And so I was down to 125 pounds. And when I projected out 30 days, I was going to land around somewhere between 112 to 114. And at 125, I had no fat left. You could see, I took a picture the last day of my fast of what I looked like. At the time, my beautiful angel, my divine angel, Mary Kelly, she looked at me, she said, "I can't even look at you anymore." And so that was part of my motivation to exit the fast. But to be fair, Mary decided to jump in with me for different health reasons. She was going after, she had gut issues for 30 years.
Wow.
As well as she was suffering for 2 years from menopause symptoms that no matter what she did, no matter how she tried different treatments, holistic and traditional, she was not getting relief. And the gut issues, she had a lot of food allergies. She was gluten intolerant. She had nut allergies. She had dairy allergies. She had soy allergies.
Wow.
She just, and there was no consistency in it, And so she took a different approach because she had the challenge of, she normally has low blood pressure. And so when she started fasting, blood pressure that was normally, like say 90 over 70 was dropping to 70 over 50. And she realized about 4 or 5 days into it that she wasn't going to make it to 7 or 8 days. She needed to do something. So she started juicing. But juicing for her was a simple juice of celery, ginger, and green apple primarily, twice a day. Wow. And that allowed her to get her blood pressure back up because at that point, there were moments where she couldn't even get a reading. The blood pressure machine was saying error, which meant that
Wow.
it was so low they couldn't read.
Dang.
And we were testing our blood pressure 3 times a day. So what happened for me was I went in I was going after chronic major diagnoses, such as I was diagnosed with a rare blood disorder, an autoimmune that basically was taking me out. It had totally blocked my arteries to my heart. It had taken both my iliac arteries out, so I had 2 legs. One was 100% occluded. My right leg, I had no blood flow going down to my ankles 3 years ago, and I was 90% blocked on my left. So they did repairs on me. They did a bypass on my right leg, and then they did a stent for my left, and then they went into my heart and area and cleaned up my heart. But I also had 25% of my aorta was riddled with lesions, and my left ventricle artery for my heart was 45% blocked. And in June, they found that I had a nodule on my lower left lung. So I got hit with a lot of different things. Of course, I had heart disease. I had a heart attack when I was 48. Look, my medical record was like a deck of cards. When I opened it up online from Cedars-Sinai, I had 9 major diagnoses. I forgot about. Let's talk about. I was diabetic. I had high blood pressure, and my cholesterol levels were over 400. And so I was, it was so bad that it was just one more time that I just didn't show my medical records. I don't think I showed it to my wife at the time, because if she saw how sick I really was, that would have just taken her to another level of her lows. And so, that's where I was. And I did this water fast because I did a lot of research on it. And I also had a guest on my show that I had met 3 years ago when I was on the business trip right after I was on my healing way. And he had healed himself from prostate cancer doing a 30 to 45-day water fast and then transitioning and becoming a raw vegan. And he's been healed 5 years now. He's clean. And so I knew for the last year that I had a feeling that although I was reversing a lot of my diseases, that there's just a few of the big ones that were left that I hadn't tackled yet. And back in June, I went for annual testing. And what happened was the doctors found that my bypass in my leg was 100% occluded. Now, if you don't know what that means, I'll explain it to you in common lay terms. My bypass was 100% blocked, meaning that it no longer was working. And I should have had no blood flow to my toes, from my hip down to my toes. 0 blood pressure, except they found I was at 70%. And I'm like, how is that possible? And what they found was that through my exercise, I had started to build a collateral freeway, collateral vessels to fuel the blood down on my legs. And not only had done that, they identified 2 on my right leg, but they identified that I've been building collateral vessels for my heart as well. And so I blogged on that. I was literally at the hospital for additional testing that day. And I sat there and imaging at Cedars, and I blogged about bypassing the bypass, that I had bypassed the bypass. And what that meant to me was, Western medicine put in a synthetic bypass for my body. But you see, that's not how God intended me to be. There's something called God's natural laws, and Western medicine doesn't take that into account. What I believe what happened was when God knew that I had built enough of my own freeway system and I had enough vessels to fuel my blood, he took the bypass, he put it out of service. He said, you don't need this anymore. You got all you need. You have it right within you, and it comes from who you are. You and I, we had an agreement, and we worked together through prayer and meditation, and you've gotten this far. And I thought that was going to be the motivation. And I believe that God thought that was going to be the motivation for me to do this water fast, because ultimately my goal was to heal my autoimmune disorder, this blood disorder, so I could get off one of the last 2 drugs, which was my blood thinner and my high blood pressure pill. Well, I missed that signpost because that wasn't enough for me to go, I'm going to do the water fast. But what it was enough for me to do was to say, I'm going to leave the ocean where all my healing took place, where all the miracles unfolded. And I'm going to move to Arizona so I could climb the mountains and up-level my healing process, go to the extreme, because when I would hike, the pain in my leg was so severe. And what the doctor said was that's because your blood pressure, your bypass has been blocked. And that's the pain it's the pain of you building this new collateral freeway
Yeah, new
system.
growth. Yeah.
That's the new growth. And so I realized that through the pain, I'm going to get to grow at a whole nother level physically. And so once I got that word, within 3 weeks, I had bags were packed. We shut down our apartment and we moved to the mountains of Arizona so that I could up level my healing process. But I missed the signpost because 2 days after we moved here, I get a call from my cardiologist and he says, well, I got some news for you. He goes, that MRI we did on your heart, you know the situation there, your stents are looking good, they're clear, except they found that you have a nodule on your lower left lung. And I go, what are you saying? And he goes, well, you're at this threshold where you if it gets any larger, we're going to probably say it's cancer. So, but if it doesn't, then you're okay. And I said, well, what does that mean? He goes, well, just come back in 6 months and we'll do another MRI. And if it's grown, and we'll have to do a biopsy. I'm like, what? Wait, what? You just want me to sit on the sidelines and just wait and see if it gets bigger? Oh. That's the best solution that Sinai had for this guy right here. And I was like, okay, Doc, I think it's time for me to hang up this phone. And I'm going to pause, and I'm going to process this, and then I'm going to reflect on this moment. And I hung up the phone, and it took me about 4 hours to have the courage to break the news to Mary, like, I just got this call, and this is what I learned. And you know what? Within 24 hours, intuition spoke to me.
Wow. And
I knew in that moment that I had the next thing that I missed was that I needed to do this water fast because I was not willing to wait on the sidelines for the next diagnosis from Sinai.
Right.
I was going to take back my life in totality, and I was going to get well, and I was going to heal myself. And I know this is that I don't know how much healing has taken place. I don't know because I haven't had those tests done yet.
Right.
But I can tell you this, day one of my water fast, by 4 o'clock that afternoon, my blood pressure was in a normal range. Now, usually by 4 o'clock, my blood pressure is up because I don't take my pressure pill to the nighttime. So usually by the afternoon, it's around 140 over 85, 130, depending on how much stress or what I've got going on. Mm-hmm. My pressure would be up. Well, my blood pressure was normal. And that evening, my blood pressure was lower, normal range lower. I looked at Mary and I'm like, this is day one. Is it possible that I no longer have high blood pressure from 1 day of fasting? And she looked at me and I looked at her and we both stood at about the same time. I guess I'm not taking my blood pressure pill tonight. And I did. And I didn't take it the next day. And I didn't take it the next day. And it's been about 30 days since I started. Wow. My blood pressure has been normal. I've been off the fast. I'm back to healthy nutrition. I didn't take coffee back in for a week because I wanted to make sure to see how my body adjusted to just normal nutrition.
Totally.
Primarily vegan with just about 10% of wild-caught fish. Mm-hmm. But I'm back to my 16 ounces of coffee in the morning. My blood pressure, I continue to monitor it now twice a day instead of 3 times a day. Mm-hmm. I have healed my blood pressure. The second thing that I healed was from all the anesthesia and all the different tests that I had done over the 3 years, I had developed brain fog. And I was aware that I had brain fog, but I didn't realize how significant it was because I just adjusted my life to it. But I was aware when there were times that I was like, I guess I have some brain fog right now. Well, it took about a week. Mm-hmm. I did this water fast, but about my 8th day in, I woke up one day and I felt different up in here. And what had happened was my brain had healed. My brain had gone through regeneration. All the toxic cells that had been in that vital organ for the past 3 years were gone.
Wow.
I was in a state of ketosis. And within 2 weeks, I'd done something I'd never done before. I learned how to navigate and become a graphic designer through Photoshop and start to create graphic designs.
Yes.
I had to master 2 websites, one to build a website and one to build my product line to then build a website. So I had to learn 3 different programs on a water fast and decide, my goal was I'd launch this new online store by the end of October. Well, I launched it, I think 2 weeks ago. maybe the last day of my fast or the day thereafter. That's a miracle, because with that brain fog, there was no chance I would have had the capacity to do what I had to do. But, I kept really busy. I was working, I hadn't worked those kind of hours in 3 years, but I was motivated, and I launched the store. And I love the concept because it's all about giving back. It's all about, we pay it forward to ourselves. Today I chose to wear gratitude, but we got over 140 products in our store online. It's called chooseapparel.com. And it's an opportunity, when we wear a shirt, I get, whether it's me or someone else, people that we meet, strangers, will comment on our shirts. Yeah. And we'll also notice that they'll change their attitude. They'll shift their perspective. It says choose kindness or choose love or choose courage or choose gratitude, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's just a positive way to remind ourselves of how we want to behave, how we want to treat ourselves, and how we want to treat others.
So powerful.
And how we want to teach people how to treat us as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's like be the change that you want to see in the world. If you want people reflecting kindness and gratitude and inspiration and living their purpose, then it's up to us to wear that, to live that, to be that, so that they show up like that for us. Because what we put out in the world, we're going to attract back to us as well. What we're thinking about, what we're focused on, that's what we're going to get into our space as well. And I love your journey and sharing that, man. That was so powerful. And 18 days, that's freaking intense, man. I've done 3 days, and I thought that was tough. So you are a champion, dude. So what do you see that fast leading into, like now that you've completed that and you're riding on, so to speak, the high of that momentum and that completion, that achievement, that accomplishment in a good way. I think that there's a part of that is inspiring for you and your pride and who you know yourself as and what you're capable of, and you can build on that success in this new direction rather than the old direction that you were in. Like, what do you see as possible now in this new direction? Because you're taking massive action and you're doing things that take courage, and you're really taking care of yourself and tuning into yourself and your intuition.
I love to pause. Pausing is a beautiful thing.
It is.
My life has just so much changed. Even leading up to the fast, when I started to blog, that led to the idea that I needed to. It had been suggested that I have a story to share with others, a story of hope. My acronym for hope is healing our perspective every day, and that's what I get to do today. Is I get to heal my perspective every day, only because it's a choice. I choose to work on that every day. And how I do that is through self-care. I learned early on in my healing process that the only way that my life was going to change was that I had to carve time out for myself every single day. Just like I had to carve time out for myself to brush my teeth, to take a shower, right? To eat, right? To sleep. I had to take time for self-care, except I didn't know what self-care looked like because I never had really done self-care in my life. I was too busy thinking I needed to take care of my children or my partner in my life or my employer, or my customers, a lot of customers, And that left, the only time I took for myself was when I laid my head on a pillow right before I went to sleep and I'd pass out. And that was my self-care. That's what I knew was self-care. A lot of people, I'll ask them today, what kind of self-care do you do? And I go, well, for women, they'll say, well, I get my nails done, I get a pedicure, I get a manicure, I go for massage, I get my hair done, I go to a spa. And here's my truth, here's my perspective on that. Those are beautiful compliments to self-care, but those are all what I call external ways to, they give you an immediate hit. It's kind of like, it's just a quick hit,
right?
But it doesn't last. It just doesn't last long enough to really allow you to really be connected with yourself. Self-care is the work we do on the inside. Self-care for me it's about focusing on 4 pillars of my life. And if any one of the 4, I call them pillars, you could refer to them as columns. It's about balance. And the 4 for me is the emotional, we've mentioned it on the show, emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual. And if I don't focus on one of those 4 on any given days, I'm off.
Yeah.
And when I'm off, I don't show up being my greatest possible self.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. I have the potential to be triggered. I have the potential to be irritable, discontent, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Halt is another one. If you've done any 12-step recovery work, you're familiar with that term. But I had to understand and learn how to take care of myself. Just like we don't know what we don't know until we know it. But, once I started to understand and I started to experience the gifts and blessings of what true healthy self-care can look like,
Mm-hmm.
I got addicted to that. I just never was willing to walk away from it. And what happened to me was the self-care was the gateway for me for self-love. Because up until I didn't know how to do self-care, I certainly didn't have love for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly didn't have what I'll call authentic agape love for other people in my life, because I just didn't have it. I was too damaged. I had too many wounds from my childhood that I'd never faced before. So for me, the healing process is I had to be willing to walk through and really, really go inward and work on healing my mind, my body, and soul. Yeah. And through that process, I began to like myself. And eventually that like turned into love. And through loving myself, I was then able to start to be present for other people in my life, people that I care about, people that I know, people that are close to me, but also people that I just meet, people that I meet on the street. And that's how I give it back today. So what does it mean for me moving forward, Chris, is I'm kind of doing a lot of it today. I write, I do Facebook Lives, I continue to share my journey, I continue to share my lessons, I continue to share my moments of clarity, my awakenings as they unfold, my moments of humility and gratitude, the lessons that I learned. I've started a show back in July on Facebook Live. It's called Real Men, Real Talk Raw. Mm-hmm. And that show has been just a blessing in my life and for other men that have come on sharing their stories of pain and triumph, of healing, of lessons learned, all different men, walks of life, from young men in their 20s to men in their 60s, mm-hmm. that have their own story to share. And then I'm launching a second show this Sunday. It's called Real People, Real Stories, Raw. And it's really a show. I have a co-host. Her name is Deb's Deb. She did a show with me last Friday night, a special we did on her healing journey. Unfortunately, she was raped 2.5 years ago. She came on my show and she spoke about the advocacy work that she's been doing up in Canada, where she's from, and how life has changed and what she's had to go through in order to heal her wounds from this devastating event in her life. And through that show, we had such an onslaught of women that just have shown up and come out and shared in a very public way parts of their story. Yeah. And within 24 hours, wisdom spoke to me. I reached out to Deb while I was on one of my hikes on Saturday morning, right about towards the peak of Pinnacle Peak in North Scottsdale. And I said, I have an idea, and I'm going to put it out there to you. Just think about it, pray on it, and if you are interested, then we can talk about, let's brainstorm. And the idea was, let's do a show together. So we come on as co-hosts, and we invite women on that are willing to share their experience and their journey of walking through either sexual abuse, domestic abuse, rape, whatever abuse that they have endured that they may have not felt the courage to come out and speak about, but that could actually help them through their healing process. And so that's a show we're launching. And then the third show I'm going to be launching is a show on health and wellness. And that's going to be more of one focusing on, how can we heal ourselves from autoimmune disorders, diseases, cancer, heart disease, diabetes. I've done a lot of that healing. I've healed from a lot of devastating chronic diseases. I've gotten rid of, I'm off of all my meds except for one now. I'm down to one. Wow. And I was on, I think, 8 different pharmaceuticals and 42 different supplements. And I'm off of all of them. And that was a daily deal. Damn. And I'm down now to 1 pill. And my intention is to be off of that. I'm going to shred that last one.
Love it. Yes, you are.
I'm probably going to have to do some more water fasts, but that's okay. I'm going to do shorter ones because I don't have the weight now to do 30-day fast, but it's okay. I'm going to be working with a research doctor, Dr. Q, and we're going to do a lot of work together. He's asked me to come in under his, in his organization. He's going he's going to work with me. He'd like to allow me to be part of his research study on fasting, and because he works with cancer patients and autoimmune and diabetic patients on healing, utilizing something called deuterium water levels, and straightening that out, and that helps us heal. So there's so much exciting stuff going on. And for me, you know what it's about? It's way less about my story. It's just me sharing my story with others and inspiring others to come out. I've got so many people today on a water fast that are either in the middle of one or about to start. Yeah. I've got women and men that have reached out to me on a daily basis that are asking me for guidance and advice on, and I'm sharing what I did. And I also share different links of where I did my research. And you know, it's a beautiful thing when we're able to help one another. You know, we don't have to do this thing called life alone anymore. Like you said, you know, you ask people for advice, for some introspect on who you are, and I get to do it in a different way today. And you know, we get to help each other this way. And it's a beautiful thing.
100%. I love it, Jay. Dude, you're freaking awesome, man. Thank you for being such a beacon of light and health and transformation, you know, that anything is possible, no matter what diagnosis, no matter what, you know, decree is being given by people. I think that you're such a powerful testament of going within and finding that self-love, self-source, and, you know, tapping into a higher power to be able to create whatever reality that anyone desires. And you're a role model for that. You're a leader for that. And I super, super appreciate you coming on and sharing about your journey and your story today and what you've accomplished, what you've overcome. And I know our audience wants to know, how do they stay connected with you and what can they do next? You mentioned a couple different shows. If you want to recap those and just let people know how they can stay connected with you. Okay.
Well, you can find me on Facebook, either under Real Men, Real Talk Raw. That's one of my pages. You could also find me at Heal Mind, Body, Soul. Is another one on Facebook. You could also find me under Jay Rothman. You could also find me at Spirituality Gone Wild, which is a channel where my shows right now have come out broadcast, but I do push them to the pages that I just mentioned. And I'm in the middle of embarking on, I'm going to be creating a nonprofit organization that the shows that I'm going to launch and the shows that I'm going to be involved in are going to all fall under the nonprofit, as well as the Choose Apparel line. It's going to be a resource for people that are all the different hot topics that we are dealing with in life, a place where we can come for resources, education, fundraising, donations, for shows, for lessons, lessons, how to heal, nuggets, as you call them, liquid gold. And I'm just going to continue to follow what wisdom and intuition tells me I need to be doing in my life. So I get to pay it forward to others. And that's how I get to change my legacy one day at a time. Because this is what I do know, is that yesterday is gone. Yesterday's history. Tomorrow is mystery. All I have is today. So I'm going to make today the best day of my life. I get to show up for myself. And when I show up for myself, I get to show up for other people. Coming from a place and a space of love and kindness and gratitude and humility. And I am just so grateful for the life I have today and for having the opportunity to meet someone like Chris Burns, who's making a difference in people's life as well. So I thank you for that.
Thank you, brother. I love you, man. Keep up the great work, and we'll see you soon, okay?
Peace out.
Awesome. Take care.
Take care.